Welcome to Setting the Table, hosted by Robin B., where we bring you the insider's scoop from top restaurateurs, industry experts, and creative minds who know what it takes to stand out and succeed. Hungry for insights on how to fuel your growth and stay ahead of the curve? You've just found your secret ingredient.
Hi, everybody. This is Robin B. Here for the second episode of our new podcast, Setting the Table. Today, I'm just thrilled to have our guest, Rachel Austin. She is a powerhouse when it comes to restaurant marketing. Rachel is the owner and founder of two awesome agencies here in Houston, Texas. Her first is Hometown Social, and the second is Rachel Austin Public Relations. She has been doing both PR and social advertising, I would say all digital advertising, for years, since 2013. Her team specializes in digital storytelling and just really impactful PR. She has worked with 30 national, regional, and local partners over the years, such as the original Ninfa's, Buc-ee's, Eight Wonders Brewery, and Willie's Restaurants, and more. She's got a ton of clients who love her, and for good reason. She's also been recognized as one of Houston's Business Journal's 40 Under 40, which is pretty awesome. Says a lot about her knowledge, her expertise in the industry. And her husband, Mark Austin, have also founded or co-founded Houston Music Foundation. She did so during the pandemic, where she raised and distributed $100,000 in grants to local artists. So she's got a real passion to help people as well. So welcome, Rachel. So glad to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. All right. So I wanted to just start off. I mean, I spew out a bunch of facts and stuff, but I would love people listening to hear more about you from you. So tell us a little bit about your background and what you do, your passions, and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Hometown Social in November 2013. I started off as kind of like a general marketing and advertising company. I had all these clients from kind of, industries across the board. So like a chiropractor and gyms and restaurants and, other small businesses, because inherently kind of who I am is I love helping people. So my origin story for my business is I really wanted to help people be successful. But I realized about 2 years in that I was going 2 miles wide and 2 inches deep. And if I ever wanted to be really, really good, not just, adequate, not just work hard, but really excel in one industry, I needed to pick one industry. So I picked kind of the hospitality entertainment block and just dove in. I mean, there's only so much you learn in school, right? Technology changing every day. I mean, look at kind of all the recent stuff with AI. And by the time you learn one AI model, there's a new one out. So I'm a lifelong learner, so I basically just kind of immersed myself in everything that was important, from learning point of sale system software to, social media to PR to, kind of like all the things, and kind of fine-tuned down what do restaurants need. And I'm not just talking about the new hot restaurant that's opening on Saturday night that's, already getting a ton of press. I'm talking about existing businesses. I say this to my clients all the time. My motto, I don't want to open restaurants. I want to keep restaurants open. So that's kind of a differentiation there.
And you have both Hometown Social, which maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that. That was sort of your beginning baby. And then more recently, you've, launched Rachel Austin Public Relations. So do you want to kind of talk about those kind of agencies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that something we don't talk about nearly enough is burnout. Everybody experiences it on every level. And I was essentially, my PR career kind of grew organically. We don't typically advertise our business. We rely on word of mouth referrals, which is, working for us. I think a word of mouth referral for your business is the strongest referral you can get. So, the PR side of my business started growing, but then I still had Hometown Social with all of these employees, and managing people is a lot of work. And so it just kind of became too much to be everybody's publicist and the CEO of Hometown Social. So I hired from within a creative director to kind of rise up and take the reins of Hometown Social. I still own both companies, but I'm focusing 100% of my time right now on publicity because that's where I thrive.
Yeah. And I think you do a great job on both. Yeah. I totally hear you on the burnout piece. It can be refining and knowing where your wheelhouse really is very valuable, and it allows you to really hone in on getting great at it, right? Versus doing too much and being good at it. So I think that was awesome. And I know both of the agencies are doing a great job for their clients. For this interview, we're going to focus on PR, right? Because that's an area that you are awesome at. And so I wanted to first just step back and get a good perspective of how does PR fit within the marketing mix of a restaurant? How should restaurateurs be approaching PR, and, how should they look at it when they're looking at their marketing budget and their planning?
Right. So I think that PR is one piece of a marketing pie. So you cannot do just PR, just social media, just, direct me or, whatever, marketing tactics that you need to factor in all of the pieces of the equation. And, it's like a recipe. Sometimes if you leave out the baking soda, it just won't rise. And so, I think it's important to look at your marketing program holistically. And one of the reasons why PR is so important is because gives you top of mind awareness. And that happens over a long period of time. One of the biggest misconceptions I think that's out there with PR is that if you get a good TV segment or a really nice article, that it's going to immediately increase your foot traffic to your business.
Right.
And that is a very, very untrue statement. It takes a lot of work over a long period of time. But, if you don't have the budget for it, there are other ways to contribute to your own PR program from within.
For sure. And, one thing about, I think, PR that makes it unique within the marketing mix, you have paid advertising, you have organic type of things. PR is very authentic. It has a lot of credibility with people, right? If people see a advertisement, they know that you paid for it. Whereas PR is just, this is editorial or broadcast. It's a story about you, but you haven't paid for it. You're not really totally in control of it. And so maybe you can talk a little bit more about how that is unique to PR, because that is something very different. It is not fully controlled, but it also then has a lot more credibility, I think, a lot of times with consumers, because they know that it's not bought. They know that it's not paid for per se, right?
It absolutely does. But I saw a study and it said that 3 out of 10 people will believe in advertisement, but 8 out of 10 people will believe in editorial. What does that tell you about the value of?
Yeah, for sure.
So a lot of times, I do a quick, morning segment. My software gives me assigned value to the segment. So assigned value is the PR value. It's what you would pay for an advertising plus the credibility of editorial. So an actual editorial piece is much more valuable than an advertorial piece, if that makes sense.
For sure.
I wanted to touch on one other thing that you said, because it is a double-edged sword. So once you put a story out into the editorial community, whether you're working directly with one journalist, whether you pitch multiple journalists, you can't get the toothpaste back in the tube once you've spit it out. And
For
so
sure.
there is a tremendous amount of responsibility for publicists to communicate factual, timely, and relevant information.
Right. And that's so, I'm glad you pointed that out, because that is really, really an important thing. You can't control it.
No,
That's
and,
just the reality.
and you can't control it. And say I were to make a mistake. Okay. In the normal corporate world, my boss might find out, I might get a slap on the wrist. If I make a mistake in my position and the Wall Street Journal prints it, I could be sued. It's very, very important to take care with every single detail, because your literal, your company's viability and your own financial security depends on those three elements.
Right. The accuracy of the information and making sure what you're putting out there is legit
Yeah.
and has been fact checked and everything else. Yeah. Very, very important. Bigger restaurants can go and hire someone like yourself, which they would be smart to do. But for the smaller restaurateur, they may not be able to afford, PR from a professional level. Is there PR that they can actually do themselves that you would recommend, or do you have any kind of insight on that topic?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's very impactful when a restaurant owner reaches out directly to media. I think that there have been, there are several kind of mom and pop restaurants. I'm friends with the owners, and they kind of send notes to press when they're doing something special, and they get coverage. So, one thing that you can do is just get together a list of people that you'd like to email. I would make sure that you're not just emailing, any reporter from the Houston Chronicle, that you're actually doing your due diligence and research and deciding who is the best person to pitch for this. So, there's usually a food editor for all of the larger publications. And so maybe the food editor, but maybe if it's an event, you're pitching the events person. So I would make sure that your news, number one, is relevant to the person that you're pitching. Number two is kind of the same point, but you need to make sure that your content is relevant to them. So look at the type of stories. Let's just take, a writer from Culture Map, for example, because Culture Map, they have editions all throughout Texas. So say you are going to pitch this writer from Culture Map. Before you pitch them, go and read what they're writing about. Go and read what they were writing about this time last year. And a good way to kind of decipher what might be on their editorial calendar without a publicist is to look at historically what they write about this time of year. So, for example, we just had Halloween recently. So, writing about Halloween specials may be something that they do every single year. Same when it comes to holiday catering or Labor Day or where to take dad for Father's Day, So there are all of these editorial opportunities that are kind of baked in to the publications. So
yeah, and it's also just to chime in and build off your point there. It's looking at the editorials, but it's also just taking a step back and understanding, editorial publications or broadcast networks. They have a lot of content they need to put out, right? And they're looking for opportunities for good content that is specific to the season, to relevant events, to holidays, whatever's going on at that time. They are actively looking for relevant things to talk about, things that they think their audience would be interested in knowing about, would potentially, appreciate hearing about, and so forth. And so, that kind of ties into what Rachel's saying, right? Is, you need to do your homework, look at the publications or the broadcast stations that you're thinking about, and see what they've done now, what they did a year ago, what they do kind of each month, but also just a kind of a seasonal common check, checklist is valuable, I think. I don't know if you feel the same way, of just these are the things that are important right now to people. This is what people care about in August, September, October, November. You're not going to necessarily light the world on fire with those, but if you have something that's relevant to them, it could be relevant to then an editorial editor or reporter, right?
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say about that though is just be demure about it. So don't do too much. Don't email them too much.
Yes.
If you email them and they don't email you back, do not get offended. That happened to me with people that I've had relationships with for 15 years. People get busy. It's not personal, but I would say be persistent, but don't be a pest.
Right. And so when people are like restaurateurs or someone's trying to do it themselves, are there certain no-nos that you would suggest? Like, obviously pestering them would be one. Is there any other kind of tips like that are kind of must-haves when somebody is approaching doing some PR on their own?
Absolutely. So I would say never send any sort of pitch to media without images. That is the number one thing that I hear from new publicists. And as a matter of fact, when I was a new publicist, Greg Morago from the Houston Chronicle sent me an all caps email. It was like one of the first releases I had ever put in. By the way, I love Greg Morago and he made me a better publicist. But he sent me an all caps email. I will never write about anything without pictures. And I never made that mistake again. I never did. I do not send out press materials without photography. I would include both vertical and horizontal shots, depending on if you're kind of what spot you're pitching for. But I would give the art direction team a couple of options. Sending incomplete information is a big no-no. So if you don't have the date, the time, the address, the parking information, the prices for each item, then you do not have complete information. So make sure that you are compiling all of your information. And another mistake I would tell people to avoid is, I think that you need to give people time. So you cannot email somebody 3 days before your event and expect that it's going to get written about. It needs to be weeks in advance. And if you say to yourself, oh, well, I'm not going to have the information until 3 days before the event, then don't pitch it. It's not considerate to pitch that late.
What do you normally say is the benchmark? Is it you use a couple weeks? I tend to say 3 weeks is
2 to 3 weeks, depending. And then the last one, because I know we have a lot to cover, but the last one I would say is just be very polite, be the most polite version of yourself. Remember that although these relationships are somewhat transactional, if this is the industry that you've chosen, you will develop a long-term relationship with these people. And long-term relationships are very important. And a relationship in work can be healthy and transactional. And so remember that your goal is not a one-hit wonder. Your goal is long-term relationship between your business establishment and the publication.
Absolutely. I mean, that's such good advice, right? So many things are relationship building. And this one in particular is really important because editors and the people who are in those positions, they are a bit of a gatekeeper to sharing that information. And so if they know you're providing them with rich content that is accurate, it has all the information, you send them pictures. If you do your part and then you're also someone they like to work with, you've just increased your odds of actually getting picked up. Is there any sort of standards that you would suggest, like as far as how to send pictures or the actual release itself, like just putting it actually into the email? Or do you have any suggestions on that kind of stuff?
I'm inching further and further away from traditional press releases. I think that it's more important to pitch than it is to, provide a generic informational document, So I typically do not paste my press releases in the email.
Okay.
Say I attach them write a pitch about why it might be important for them to read this. And, I've never had any issues with people not wanting to click through to any of my links, but I've also been doing this for a long time. I would say one of the best ways you can do that is legitimize yourself by getting an email address and a proper email signature. If somebody is writing you from an AOL or Yahoo address versus a McDonald's.com address, it does make a difference. And so present yourself credibly as much as you possibly can.
So with PR, obviously we've talked about sort of how to execute, but one of the big things that I think is critically important in digital storytelling is branding and identifying that unique selling proposition. And so, how important do you think that is in PR and just restaurants in general to have, sort of that point of difference?
Yeah, absolutely. So I ask my clients a couple of questions when I'm considering taking on a prospective client. One of them is what differentiates you from your competitors. And number two is, what keeps you up at night? What are you the most stressed about? And so a lot of times, for example, I work with a barbecue restaurant out in Pearland, Manville, Santa Fe. And one of the very unique things about them is they are a true blue Texas barbecue joint, but they have a drive-through. It is amazing. Every drive-through restaurant I can even think of right now is not, necessarily family meals, it's the Whataburgers,
kind of fast in, fast out,
fast food. But their ability to differentiate themselves with that drive-through, and they have a convenience store that you can also purchase items in the drive-through. So that's just a massive selling point for them. It's a very heavily residential area, lots of moms. And what they did, though, and one of the reasons why I love them is they are parents. They are moms and dads. It's a family operation. And so when they were planning for their business, they're thinking, what would have made my life easier at this point? And so thinking about your community, thinking about their needs and doing, even if it's not, building out a drive-through, what can I do to help my community? And
it goes back to that targeting piece, right? Knowing who's your audience, who's your target, who are you actually serving, and then what do they care about? What, to your point, like what are their needs? What do they care about? What would they benefit from and really value? That's just such a huge winning point. If you can get that right, you've already, won a big chunk of the battle. And so I wanted to get your perspective on what is the coolness factor, and is there a way to actually try and foster that and grow it?
I think that there definitely is a cool factor when it comes to, certain locations. But I mean, cool factor is subjective. It's, what type of restaurants you like. What kind, do you like it noisy? Do you like it quiet? And so, there are definitely cool kids in the restaurant community. But I'll tell you that I honestly believe most of them got there by service to their community. So there are restaurants that I've seen start just teeny tiny mom and pop, and through their care and service to their community, participating in industry events, going out and meeting people, and not just meeting people, but knowing people in the restaurant community, you become this part of something kind of bigger than yourself, and when the hurricane hits, you guys are all, working together to bring aid to the community and to the first responders. And so I think that the best way to kind of get your foot in the door is to begin serving your community as soon as you can. I mean, obviously within your means. You can't, not every business can go donate 1,000 meals to an organization, but the owner might want to go and work in that kitchen that's making 1,000 meals. So.
And I think, there's the community piece and getting the word out there, like people know and they trust you, they build a rapport with you, and you sort of build this reputation of inclusivity and serving. If you have some kind of dish that is built off of a family recipe that has generations behind it, or something that truly sets you apart, or maybe it's just an incredible ambience and experience, I do think that trying to dial that up in all your communication too, in addition to all the things that Rachel just talked about, where, getting yourself out there and connecting with the community and the industry in general, but doing those things, like, they can set you apart in a way that has a coolness element to it. I mean, I look at like some of the restaurants that have like a Instagram wall, or they encourage, being able to take pictures of the food and emphasizing that, like, there's a certain amount of sharing and I guess just hype that comes out of people taking a picture there, and then they share it on their social, and then it becomes more sort of an organic sort of share. I don't know if you have any thoughts on kind of those kind of activities that restaurants could do to increase sort of that exposure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anytime that you have the ability, like a selfie station, any sort of Instagrammable moments or areas in your restaurant, I mean, it will increase your digital footprint for sure. I would say, it is, and I've said this to a million clients over the years, I can get them through the door and you have to take it from there.
Right.
And so
Right.
I would say if you're very focused on having an Instagrammable spot, on, setting up your restaurant for success, make sure that you are giving way more attention to the back of the house, because if we get people through the door and they have a negative experience, they might post about it, but I can't guarantee that it'll be positive. So making sure that you're balancing the front and the back of the house with all of that is vital.
Yeah, and I feel like, I feel like I probably should start every one of our podcasts off with that sort of caveat, right? If you aren't delivering an incredible experience that people come, they eat your food and they're like, wow, this is awesome, that's where you need to pay your attention to first and foremost. And then also the experience with your staff and serving people and making sure that all of the elements of the experience in the restaurant are there. And then once those are done, then it's leaning in on the marketing and the PR and all the other stuff.
Right.
So I have just a couple last questions, but
Yeah.
this has been great. And so I know a lot with, a lot of time is spent with also outreach to bloggers and influencers when it comes to PR. And so I just wanted to see if you wanted to give a little bit of insight into kind of best practices on that, how you see them influencing restaurateurs, and, any advice you might give someone if they were trying to do it on their own versus hiring a publicist like yourself.
I actually hire influencers myself all the time because they absolutely help. They're a piece of the marketing pie. I think that they do actually help too with cool factor. And so it's difficult to kind of decipher, some Instagrammers, bloggers, influencers can charge upwards of like a couple $1,000. But then there's also this really cool niche of influencers called micro influencers. And so they have between 1 and 10,000 followers. And typically, not always, but they typically don't charge for their services. One thing I would say is if you invite an influencer in, please do not charge them for their food or drinks. If you invite somebody over to your house and they ate a piece of pizza, you don't ask them to send you a Venmo for the pizza, So when you invite a blogger in, always invite them with a +1 and cover the cost of their ticket. I have only seen in my entire career, I've only seen maybe 1 or 2 bloggers try to take advantage of the situation, but that was years and years ago. Say that your PPA is $25. And so you're like, this is 2 people, so I'm going to cut them off at 50. But then they order, a specialty dessert that you want them to post about. And you end up, saying, oh, well, they went past the 50 mark. It's just the cost of doing business. And so I find that the majority of influencers are extremely respectful. And keep in mind, these people are not full-time bloggers, most of them. The ones with 1 to 10,000 followers, they are nurses and teachers, and they work jobs just like the rest of us, and they're doing this with their free time. So I would just say, be hospitable. If you don't have a budget for influencers, check out that micro blogger area. You can search by hashtag, look and see who else your foodie friends are following, and just be kind and pay for their dinner. There's more than food and lifestyle too. Say you have a restaurant like, and True Foods is not one of my clients, but I'm just going to use them as an example because I love them. True Foods has very healthy foods. So
yes,
maybe they
so you get into somebody healthy and health focused.
Maybe they get into, fitness bloggers, So
and this is back to knowing your audience, right?
Right.
I mean,
right. Yeah. Identifying your audience is very important. So I would say, there's definitely a lot of options when it comes to that community. I do want to say one more thing, actually.
Sure.
I think if you are out there choosing a publicist right now, I just want to say how very important it is to choose somebody who cares about you and cares about your business. I personally don't take on, if you are my client right now, I believe in you. I believe in you really hard. And I would bend over backwards and move heaven and earth to have your business be successful. And so when you are out there searching for a publicist, thinking, who should I hire? Who should I give my money? You need to find somebody who genuinely gives a shit. I don't know if I can say that on here, but I did.
For sure. I love it. It's so true. I actually would say that is true for any partner you have, but particularly a publicist for sure, or BR is, again, because it is so much about credibility, and they're going out and talking on your behalf. And so if they don't believe in your product, like what.
Right. And it's not even just about believing, though. It's about being a cheerleader for somebody. And when a cheerleader's not coming from an authentic place, everybody can see it. And so find somebody who truly, deeply cares about you and your business, and some magic is going to happen for you guys.
Before we finish, I just want to give you opportunity. Is there any customers or clients that you have that you want to talk about, like as a favorite that you've kind of worked on, and the results of doing PR has really changed sort of either their paradigm or just really helped them grow, or, kind of get a really strong grasp in the marketplace? Do you want to share any experience that you've had?
Yeah, I have a really fun story. It's about creating a campaign from the ground up, and it's actually pretty short, but I'll tell you. So Axelrad is one of my clients. They're this phenomenal beer garden in this historic place, the heart of Houston. It's just a very beloved bar. But they've been in business for decades. And so they were wanting to get some national press. They weren't quite sure how to approach it. And so they kept kind of bringing me ideas, and no, that doesn't work. No, that doesn't work. So this advice, I guess, is for publicists or anybody acting in that role. If you're doing PR for your own business, pay attention to the trends outside of your industry as well. So what I did for Axelrad was, the day ChatGPT kind of boomed into the media in a massive way, I called Axelrad and I said, nobody has done a ChatGPT cocktail menu. And so if you guys can get this to me in 24 hours, you will be the first bar in the US with a full menu created by ChatGPT. So we created this whole humans versus the machine, to where it was 2 drinks, one made by ChatGPT, one made by a human being, and then had people vote for a month. We ended up being in Food and Wine, The Atlantic, of course, and a ton of local publications as well. But I need to jump on those trends. So find something cool that's going on. How does it apply to your business? How could I insert myself into this conversation in a meaningful way? And do that. And so, but get on it. You got to be fast.
I love it. And I love the idea and I love your execution of that. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So that was great. All right. So for anyone listening, if they are in a position where they want to be doing PR and they want to be working with you, do you want to give them some information on how they would find you and get in contact with you?
Absolutely. I have, you can reach me via email, rachel@rachelaustinpr.com. And I will get back to you just as soon as I can. I'm also great with text. And so when I reply to you, you'll get my number in my email signature.
Thank you so much for coming on to this show. We've been working together for, almost a decade, right? Yeah. Ooh, crazy. But you're one of my favorite people, so smart, and so creative in what you do. And so I'm so glad that, our audience will get to experience, you.
Well, I feel the same way about you. You are just brilliant, and I have all the respect in the world for you. Thank you for all of your service over the years to the restaurant community, because you have helped so many people. I've had so many of my clients come to me and say, I just had the best month that I have ever had since Robin started doing what she's doing. Robin,
oh my gosh, you're so sweet. Thank you.
And I believe in her fully, lock, stock, and barrel. She's awesome.
All right. Well, with that, thanks everybody for tuning in, and be sure to, if you like what you hear, we continue to try and bring meaningful conversations that will help you with your restaurant and growing and, becoming successful. So be sure to subscribe, and that's it. Thanks for joining us.